Seats and get started for today's meeting of the Municipal Solid Waste Resource Recovery Advisory Council, July the 11th, 2019. I'm Holly Holder, current president, and as we have some more folks filing in, we'll kind of one point of order today, a little housekeeping. The microphones are not working, and so we have some mics up here we'll be sharing, so we'll have to kind of pass those around as we introduce ourselves. So, good morning, sir. Morning. So, as everybody gets their seats, I guess we'll go ahead and start by introducing ourselves. If Scott, if you want to lead us off.
Sure. Good morning, everyone. My name is Scott Trebus. I work with Republic Services, and I represent a solid waste commercial operations.
Jim Wolverton, County Commissioner, Guadalupe County, representing counties under 130,000 in population.
Cheryl Murgo with the Houston-Galveston Area Council, representing a planning region.
Jeff Mayfield, North Texas Municipal Water District, representing a public solid waste district or authority.
Risa Weinberger with Risa Weinberger and Associates, and I'm representing composters and educators.
Richard McHale, City of Austin, representing City or County Solid Waste Management Agency.
Dave Yankee with New Gen Strategies and Solutions, representing the financial community.
And I'm Holly Holder, Park Hill Smith and Cooper in Lubbock, Texas, and I represent licensed professional engineers working in the field of solid waste management.
Good morning. I'm Chuck Rivette. I work for Waste Management of Texas. I represent a professional with experience operating a commercial landfill.
Good morning, Scott Pasternak with Burns & McDonnell, and I'm representing the general public.
I'm Trent Perez with the City of Pearland. I'm representing cities over 100,000 in population.
Charlie Fritz, Special Assistant in the Waste Permits Division. I am filling in for Earl today.
Chance Gooden with TCEQ MSW Permits.
Jaspinder Singh, TCEQ MSW Permits.
Diane Barnes, TCEQ MSW Permits.
Gene Mueller, Section Manager in the BPS section with the Waste Permits Division.
Katie Irvin with TCEQ, the Texas Environmental Excellence Awards Coordinator.
David Greer with TCEQ's Public Education section.
Jordan Fingel, Executive Director of State of Texas Alliance for Recycling.
Steve Shannon, State of Texas Alliance for Recycling.
Cheryl Price, Keep Texas Beautiful.
Ken May, Capital Area Council of Governments and the State of Texas Alliance for Recycling.
James Gradney, TCEQ Waste Enforcement Section Manager.
Good morning. I'm Michelle Havelka. I'm the Homeland Security Coordinator for the TCEQ.
Helen Gilbert, Gilbert Wilburn.
Larry Lane with Texas Disposal Systems.
Great. I guess at that point, Chance, we will turn it over to you, and I guess Charlie though first for sitting in for Earl. So, Charlie.
Thank you, Holly. Okay. Cool. I'll be going over the legislative bill implementation. As you all probably know from previous meetings, it was an extremely busy legislative session for MSW permitting. There were a lot of bills. We analyzed a lot of bills, more than we've like the Permits Division directly analyzed more bills than we have in any previous session. So, going into halfway through the session, we thought we were going to get a bunch of bills, but at the end, it turned out there were only about 4 bills, 2 directly impacting the Waste Permits Division. And those were HB 1331 and HB 1435. That's an application fee increase for MSW applications, and we call it the pending site inspections. So basically for the application fee, we're going to, both of these will require rulemaking to implement, and we are looking at for the application fee, a strict interpretation of the bill where it's going to impact the permits and permits amendments. This will raise that application fee to $2,000 plus there will be the $50 nose fee that's currently enrolled. So it'll be $2,050 for an MSW permit or permit amendment. The other applications, registrations, modifications will remain at the current $150. We'll go through rulemaking. We'll need to do rule implementation for that bill. For the pending site inspections, this, the intent is, the agency needs to come out to sites to verify the information in the application when we have an application under review. So our intent is that any application received for, again, permits or permits amendments, any application received after September 1st, the agency, most likely right now, MSW permit staff, will go out to the site and use a checklist created by staff that does a visual inspection to verify the information in the application. That's kind of how we see implementing this rule. Of course, we'll have to do rulemaking, so there could be changes to that, but that's kind of how we see our current path forward. The other bills, there is HB 1953, which is the plastics pyrolysis bill. It, in essence, exempts pyrolysis facilities for plastics from solid waste registration or solid waste requirements. Any air authorizations or water are still required, but for the solid waste aspects, it removes those requirements. And then HB 3045 by Navarez, it's a local, kind of more of a local bill related to solid waste disposal in the ETJs. There's been a couple of those in previous sessions between solid waste disposal services in counties, cities, ETJs, and counties. This one is in a similar vein. So those were the 4 bills. The agency also received funding and received 8 FTEs for MSW inspections. So the agency now has 8 additional FTEs in the Office of Compliance and Enforcement, which will be conducting, and the charges that they will be conducting, they will be focused on MSW landfill investigations.
Copies of the bills are in your
Okay, yeah, copies of the bills are there. So with that bill implementation, the MSW permits program is looking at rule implementation, rule changes. The program is also looking at making updates to the Chapter 330 rules. We are still evaluating the scope and extent of those other programmatic updates in conjunction with the bill implementation. So can't really say what we're going to do yet, but we are evaluating how far, if we want to do some other rule changes, since we're going to have the rules open for these bills. We're kind of going through those steps right now, making those decisions, and can see proceeding down a rulemaking path starting in the fall. And then, David, do you want to talk about the other 2 bills?
Let me ask you a quick question on the FTEs that you're bringing. Now, are they going to be a part of your office, or are they going to be a part of enforcement?
They are part of the OCE, Office of Compliance and Enforcement. Their task is to do landfill investigations.
Strictly landfill investigations, but then they'll also, will that be the group that'll go out when you have a new permit or a modification?
Right now,
or will that be your office?
The charge for the pending site inspections, the pending site inspections are not going to be compliance investigations. Because of the intent of the bill was to evaluate the information in a pending application, we are going to try to have MSW permit staff do those pending evaluations. But it all depends on travel funds. If we get a whole bunch of applications in El Paso, we may run out of travel money 6 months in, and then we'll need help from OCE to conduct those. The charge is for the agency to conduct those pending investigations, evaluations. I think it's better to call them evaluations. But we're going to try to have MSW permit staff look at those. And then the 8 FTEs are truly for compliance investigations.
Okay.
Did I explain it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess if it runs into I guess here's my thing. If you run into travel money, and let's say that you do have to go out to, say, the Lubbock region or Amarillo region. And so you end up having to call up that regional office, can you go out there? I guess, are they going to get a briefing of what they're, because like you pointed out, this isn't a compliance inspection. This is more of a checklist, so they'll have to be trained on how to do that.
Right. We will be creating, as part of the pending evaluation, we will be creating a checklist, list of items that will be evaluated during these evaluations. So whether or not it's permit staff or OCE staff, they will be using the same checklist for that evaluation. It's going to be items that we can visually inspect at the site.
Okay. Does anyone else have any questions related to that? Was we calling up David?
Yes.
See if we can make this work. Thanks for having me up today. I'm talk about just two bills that we've got for implementation purposes. For the record, my name is David Greer with the Office of, what is my office?
External Relations.
External Relations Division, Executive Office. So I'm working on implementation for House Bill 649. That bill will require us to do an additional work to identify the increase marketability of recyclables in the state of Texas. And we are working on a scope of work right now. Our intent is to have, be able to put a contract out for that, a request for a contract out for that the 1st of September, or as close as possible to September 1 when that is effective. And of course, it has a deadline, statutory deadlines for completion. We're working towards meeting those deadlines already. The second bill is Senate Bill 1376. That's an education-focused bill by Senator Paxton, and it does touch on recycling requirements for schools. It sets a new limit for school districts. Moves that limit from 5,000 students to 10,000 students as the threshold for when recycling programs are required for those ISDs. Additionally, it touches on municipality, state government, and so forth, and bumps that number up to 10,000 equally, and then provides an opportunity for a request for exemption from the recycling requirement for those municipalities and state governments, higher education facilities, by demonstrating that it would cost a burden upon the entity. So the statute required rulemaking in 1991 when it was put in place, and rulemaking doesn't appear to have been done, and so we're looking at whether or not we're going to do rulemaking for that on this round. Looks like we are, so we will likely be opening Chapter 328 to put rulemaking requirements in there. So, any questions?
Threshold, David, is fewer than 5,000 for municipalities.
It has been 5,000,
Uh-huh.
and it moves from 5,000 to 10,000, I believe.
Okay. Because the school district, I was just reading it here, it says municipality with population of less than 5,000, if the commission finds that compliance would work a hardship on the municipality.
Okay.
And then it says a school enrollment of fewer than 10,000 students.
Okay. I stand corrected.
So they're exempt from having to do that, so what would that, for people in the city over 5,000, what would
The way I read the bill, it allowed for any size facility to request an exemption based on a hardship threshold.
I apologize, didn't mean to call you out,
Nope,
I had
you're
it in
fine.
front of me and you were talking from the top of your head, I know, so. Wait till it turns on. There you go.
All right. David, just to clarify, you said something about the rules on 1991, and maybe I missed it. Is that tied to this bill, or those are two separate?
So the original statute from 1991 called out rulemaking requirements. That was not changed in this one, but there's additional requirements, I think, in there that are additional evaluations for justification for doing rulemaking now when it wasn't necessarily completed in 1991.
So does that mean this is something, and again, I was not aware of this bill, so this is something that's going to be required now, or yet to be determined if it will be required?
My best guess is they felt like the statute was self-implementing in 1992 when rulemaking would have been done. And with the additional requirements that are in there, what, do we need to establish a hardship criteria? What criteria could be a hardship is not set in the statute, and so we may consider including some criteria in rulemaking for that.
Okay. My only concern was if there were communities, whether it's cities or school districts, again, if I'm hearing this wrong, just correct me, but if we start requiring them to put in place recycling programs right now, given where the markets are, we're trying to help clients keep their current programs going. Requiring people to put new programs in right now, I'd be a little concerned on that.
Sure. I think the way that the agency has treated the statute over the past 20, almost 30 years, is that there was a requirement in place for them. This is not a new requirement now that would come out in the rule. And at least with the school districts, we have had publications over the last 30 years that do address helping a school district put a recycling program in place. That exemption threshold was set in there. There was no rules to establish that. And so there's not a mechanism. Right now, we don't have a mechanism for tracking what school districts are exempt and which are not. I think it would be an investigation. If someone filed a complaint and someone did an investigation, but I'm talking way outside my realm, so.
Okay. All right.
It doesn't create new, so that's,
okay.
I guess that's the best answer to your question.
Yeah, thank you.
So tell me again, so I guess this really applies to all of them. So September 1st, they become effective, and then you're going to have to propose a rule, write a rule, publish it. So what do you think as far as the time frame before these are actually in the rules and are being enforced?
For mine, I think it's way too early for us to identify what that time frame would be. We're just now beginning to explore that.
For the two MSW ones, we will probably start conducting pending site evaluations starting, we'll have the checklist ready by September 1st, and any applications that come in after September 1st will have the pending site inspections. The fees will be implemented probably after rulemaking. We'll talk with legal on when exactly, if we have to wait for the change in 330 to bring in the $2,000 application fee, or if the statute gives us enough to start charging that on September 1st for any applications afterwards. The pyrolysis bill was effective immediately, and our rulemaking for that bill will be effectively clarifying the statute, so there's pyrolysis operations can start, it's basically effective immediately. Those can start now without solid waste authorizations.
Okay. Anything else? I guess, Jordan, is there anything Star would like to, I guess you and Shannon, y'all have been tracking these too. Is there anything you'd like to discuss?
Thank you.
Steve? Okay, Steve.
Thank you, sir.
Morning, Steve.
Good morning. Steve Shannon, State of Texas Alliance for Recycling. Yes, thank you for the opportunity to let us address this issue. STAR, through its business council, its board and its business council kind of took the lead on Senate Bill 649, that effort. Frankly, a phenomenal and humbling experience. Of course, a lot of people, when we got up there, said, oh, no, this isn't going to happen right now. No, this will take 3 or 4 sessions. This just kind of thing just doesn't happen. We had several things to our advantage. One, there's a serious crisis with recycling in the country right now. As you know, 13 states right now are landfilling their recyclables. I don't know that that's happening in Texas at this point, but it could. So it was a real issue. The other is that developing markets has been in state statute for 29 years, and it hadn't been done. The other is that the supporters we had in the legislature, Representative Ed Thompson and Senator Judith Zaffarini, couldn't be better allies than what we had. There were more than 60 industry organizations or industries that stepped up in support of this bill, including MSWRRAC, the Texas chapter of NWRA, Texas chapter of SWANA, Waste Management, Public Services, Waste Connections, Owens, Illinois, the Steel Institute, on and on. That carried a lot of weight. It had overwhelming support in the House and the Senate, not unanimous, hardly anything does. Not even the lemonade bill had unanimous support. But we were very pleased that the state appropriated the money. We're looking forward to working on this in any way that we can be of assistance. It is the bill, I can tell you, was watched by the industry blogs in other states very closely. A lot of other states were trying to figure out what to do. Some of them did pass some meaningful legislation. Most of them did not. And so their eyes are upon Texas nationally. We have a tremendous opportunity to help resolve this problem by identifying a method to create more end-use markets for recyclables in Texas and obtain the benefit of those jobs, and to increase the capacity of those end-use manufacturers that exist in Texas now that use recyclables. We have submitted a draft scope of work for the recycling market study plan to David, and would like to submit a copy of that to this organization. We are willing to help as a resource in any way that we possibly can.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
Great. Hey, David, so talking about that, I guess is it going to be an RFQ go out to hire an outside firm to assist you guys? And
Sure, we're looking at that right now. We have a internal kickoff meeting with my procurement group to identify exactly what we're proposing to do with this. But our intent is to get it out the door as quickly as we can, as soon as it's effective September.
so that's kind of one of the things that's driving, your whole thing. You got to get that first before you can get into the meat of the bill, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, great. Does anyone else have any questions for David?
I just wanted to mention, I was at a conference last month, and they had someone from the state of South Carolina. So just, if you'd make a note of this, they have a really active program. They've got some of those Chinese manufacturers that are coming over for the plastics, doing the pelletization. But the state of South Carolina has a very active program, similar to doing this market development. So I'll just make a note that that's someone, when this project gets started, to look at, because I think they've got some real success stories over there. So at least they had a really cool PowerPoint on it. So
I'll look into that. Thanks.
Real quick on House Bill 3045, it's extraordinarily narrow. County of a population of 54,000, more than 54 and less than 54,500. What county is that? I'm just curious.
Based on the 2010 census data, it's Maverick County.
Maverick County.
Based on 2018 data, none.
I was gonna say a 500 person split.
So I'm guessing it's, we always look at, I guess they go by the 10-year census, and the others are just kind of projections. I'm guessing that's my understanding.
We can all move to Maverick County and really mess them up, I guess. Huh?
Yes.
Okay, very. I presume the county owns a landfill. Is that what this is about?
I do not know the situations on that. It was just based on who filed it.
I understand.
And the 2010 data.
Okay, thank you.
County seat of Maverick County is, which county, which city is that? Do you remember? I think I know where it is. Well, I guess that's kind of like a UIL realignment now, so every couple of years, you guys are gonna have to realign the counties to fall in that category.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Anyone else have anything on the legislative session? If not, Charlie, thank you very much. Glad you could make it here and did a great job standing in for Mr. Glott. So
Thank you very much.
with that, I will pass the ball over to Chance and give us the section update.
Hi, good morning. In your packet, you have your org chart that we normally go over. It shows that we have 2 vacancies. Actually, we only have 1. We have filled one of the vacancies, and they will be starting on July 22nd. Jane Lee, that's going to be starting that position on July 22nd, currently already with the agency and just transferring over to MSW permits. And the other vacancy is an engineering position, and we're in the processing, scheduling interviews for that. Right now, we have about 31 major projects in-house. We're up 3 since the last time we met, so we received some. And we talked a little bit about the landfill map viewer, and I did a little picking and clicking of how it would work. That was the internal version. We actually have gone live. We sent a gov delivery, I think, in June, letting the stakeholders know that we have this MSW landfill map viewer available. So that's out there. It's on multiple web pages under MSW. If you wanted to search it, you would use Municipal Solid Waste Viewer. So, but you could find it on any one of our MSW web pages. So hopefully it's helpful. Like I said, last time we met, we hope to expand on that and develop it and put more information out there. So something else that we sent out in Gov Delivery recently was an MSW newsletter. If you haven't signed up for our stakeholder list, I encourage you to do so, because we plan to just put just things of that's been going on in the program through this newsletter. Hopefully, the plan is to do it quarterly. If there's something that comes up that's more pressing, we can go and do a special edition. But we're proud to have the first edition out there. The first edition, I think we had things like the kind of a recap of the trade fair, how the trade fair went. We did a little summary of what the legislative session did to the program. We touted the electronic checklist again on there. We gave some feedback on the annual report. I think we put out there, and how to access annual report and quarterly reporting. We put a plug in for MSWRRAC, the meeting, and the positions that were open. So it'll be just items that we feel that is important to stakeholders that we've been working on. And so just, you know, if you're signed up for the Gov Delivery, you'll be getting it that way through the MSW stakeholder list. So something else that I was going to bring to your attention that we received some funding and approval for is the Groundwater electronic reporting system. Those that deal with the groundwater reporting to the agency, we're going to be creating a system that would hopefully reduce the amount of time preparing a report and us reviewing that report. So, for example, maybe instead of entering all the constituents that a site would have on the current form, maybe having some type of, you know, text file or something that could be submitted electronically that we can then review that way, and send, you know, reduce the amount of time that we take not only reviewing but actually developing, you know, the report that you submit to us. So we plan to start doing some JADS, I guess we call it JAD sessions. Don't know what that stands for, but it is basically we're going to get in there and start conceptually thinking about the design of that, and hopefully once we have that put together, we can have a few stakeholder meetings and seek ideas or input from that. If you have people that you're aware of complaints about how their process is now, I would encourage them to go ahead and start letting us know so we can take that into account as we are thinking about creating that system. Brandon Grillick is the point, and so he would be the person to contact to give him some feedback on what you would like to see that reporting system look like. He can be reached, you know, either phone or email, either way. He is in the MSW section. So, and that's all I have as an update. I don't really have much other than we're busy, and we are getting. I'm happy that we are getting our applications out a lot faster. I've noticed just over a trend of 4 or 5 months how much faster we're getting our applications out. The staff have really embraced the measures that we put in place, and are working closely together and communicating with our customers to see if we can shave a few days here and there. We actually just yesterday I had the chief clerk's office send a letter to us that they received that the project had already been closed. Some state agencies, it's like, hey, we don't have a problem with this project, or and he was like, this project's already been closed. So anyway, thank you for entertaining the tools that we're trying to use to improve the project, and using those things to make us consistent and more efficient. We really do appreciate it.
Yeah, and as we've gotten more and more used to the checklist, it's we've got a permit in-house we're working on, going to be submitting to you here pretty quickly, and that's when I left day before yesterday. That's what the team was doing. They were going through and filling out the checklist, and it's a good reminder for us to go through and look at everything one last time before it goes out. So
great.
I think that's been a real successful program that you guys put in place.
Great, thank you. You have any questions for me? All right, thank you.
I still want, not to harp on it, but I guess, so you're going to open up the rules just for the 2 bills or 4 bills that were passed, so you are going to have rulemaking for that, and then every now and then we have that discussion about the whole 330 rules, and the last update was 2006. Yes. So anything on the horizon for that?
Yeah, so like Charlie was mentioning, those are some of the things that we are talking internally about. Is there other items that we want to tag on as a part of these bill implementations? We haven't really formulated that idea yet and what that would be, but in my mind, it'd be something that would promote efficiency in the program. I mean, we want to, if we're going to do something to the rule, we want something that would be beneficial, that would make us even more efficient. So, I mean, we have to open the rules for the bills already. So right. Let's see if there's something that we could get support to do to make us more efficient. So we'll see.
Great. Okay. Green. Wait.
Is there any thought at all on opening the 332 rules? Because boy, are they outdated. You're killing me, man.
I understand. Yes, there's thought about that. I think that rule intertwines with many rules. It'd be a very big challenge. It has a lot of fingers that ends up impacting a lot of other rules. So that is a huge resource to challenge to do that rule, and we have to take that into account. So we know how to navigate it, and we try to get as many guidance documents and procedures and forms to help our customers navigate that rule. I know it's a challenge. Right now, our focus was landfills, so we didn't have many bills focusing on composting.
I understand that, and I fully appreciate what you're saying about the 330s. But I can't keep my mouth shut on this topic without saying that there are a lot of aspects of the 332s that have unintended consequences that were just because of when those rules were written, the way the industry and the market developed was just completely different from what was anticipated at that time. So there's some consequences, some negative consequences that were totally unintended that we're suffering through now.
You represent your industry well, and I guarantee you when it comes time, you will be a good resource.
At this point, I don't know whether I'll be on the MSWRRAC after today, but if I am, you can count on me.
Thank y'all.
Thank you, Chance, and we look forward to helping you any way we can as you get down the road with the rulemaking, and just if there's anything you'd like to vet out, feel free to bring it to the council. We'd be happy to discuss it. So next item on the agenda, then we're moving along to Gene Mueller with the manager of the Business and Program Services section. To give us an update. Gene, good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. Yeah, I have 2 updates for y'all today. The MSWRRAC nominations, which I think she was alluding to, and also scrap tires. So with the nominations, we opened up 8 positions on this council, opened up nominations for 8 positions on May 3rd. And 6 of those positions are terms that are expiring at the end of next month. And then 2 of the positions were ones that were vacant. So we decided to open them back up to see if there was any nominees. So our plan is we do have nominees for 6 of the 8 positions. The 2 positions that do not have nominees are for the elected officials in a municipality with a population over 750,000. And an elected official with a population between 25,000 and 100,000. Those 2 positions did not receive nominees, but the rest did. And so our plan is right now we are processing all those nominations, and what we're aiming to do is to get them to the commission by August 9th to get on the September 11th agenda. And that would result in having all the members picked and ready for the October 10th MSWRRAC meeting. So that's the time frame we're working towards. But I definitely want to thank Anju Shalise. She's the new person that's handling these MSWRRAC nominations and is putting them all together, as well as my team leader, Santos Olivares. So definitely a thank you to them as they process through those. Any questions on that?
Quick question. For the 2 that you received no nominations for, are they also the ones that are currently vacant, or was there an overlap?
Yes. Well, those 2 are currently vacant. So yeah, they remain vacant. There was a vacant position. There was a current vacant position for a elected official in a municipality with less than 25,000 people, and that one did receive a nomination. So that's one that's currently vacant, but we did receive a nomination for. Yes, greater than 750, and then the 25. What was it? 25,000 to 100,000.
So I know we've had someone from Houston and Austin in the past, council persons that filled that position. There was discussion at one point about there's a difficulty because as busy as those people are in their role as council members or what have you for those cities that being on this board, you know, it's hard to get those folks. There was discussion about maybe we should try to get a staff member, like an environmental service director or what have you, from that city to represent them. But with that, there was discussion at this MSWRRAC over the years about that. Is that something that would require, though, like legislative change, because that's how the advisory council's made up, or what would, is that not that easy to do?
Yeah, it's funny. Charlie, it actually, we're kind of trying to work on that. That is something that we're looking into, but it looks like Charlie may want to.
How it's worded currently is, it in statute, it says an elected official, and that's, we're evaluating ways to how far we can stretch elected official. Based on strict interpretation, we need a change, some sort of bill to change that. It's not out of the realm of possibilities, but that's probably the most difficult route. But we are trying to see how far we can stretch that to help fill the vacant positions. It's just one of those things that we need legal and buy-in from everybody to see how far we can go.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Question, nothing in the bill or the bylaws indicate that you can have an alternate?
Yeah, I mean, that's what we're trying for, is if we could do some sort of designated person to serve on the committee at nominated by the elected official or on behalf of the elected official. It's just trying to see if we can, if that's allowed by statute. But it's on our list of things to look at and see, ask the right people the right questions.
Charlie, we ran into this when we talked about it last time, and one possible thought is letting an elected official appoint someone to attend the meetings for them. We vote on very few things, right? And that person would not be authorized to vote. But there's really nothing that prohibits them from sitting and participating in the meeting, and therefore getting the representation of that population made. And that was one thing that we talked about as an end run, because the legislative process is just going to be brutal, right? And they wouldn't be able to vote, but we don't vote on things much. So this is just a thought, okay?
Okay, we'll take that into consideration.
All right, thank you. Then on to the scrap tire program update. And there is a handout in y'all's packet. So hot off the presses, as of yesterday, we got our 2018 scrap tire annual report approved. Definitely want to thank the scrap tire program, the team with Megan Henson, Emily Bell, and Santos Olivares. They had to look through about 185 annual reports to gather all this information. But it's a very handy, nice snapshot on the scrap tires in Texas in 2018. And with that report, you'll see that the total number of tires managed in Texas in 2018 was 45.9 million. So that's an increase of about 2.2 million tires from the previous year. So most of those tires have gone to tire-derived fuel. So I believe about 33%, 34% went to tire-derived fuel. And the second place item is landfills. So about 30% of tires went to landfills. But again, a nice snapshot where that report shows you what happened in 2018. And we did add a new graphic there that shows about 5 years of information. I think it's probably in black and white there on your handout, so you'll want to take a look on the website. It's in color, so you'll be able to see. But it remains pretty consistent. We're the top three, where you have tire-derived fuel being the highest end use of scrap tires. Then you have landfills, and then you have crumb rubber. That tends to be the top three. Also in 2018, there was approximately 2 million tires cleaned up from unauthorized scrap tire sites. And that was tires being removed from 11 sites, and 9 of those sites were cleaned up, and 2 sites are still ongoing. But so that was a really good success, having those 2 million tires cleaned up. And at the end, you'll see a nice map that shows you the unauthorized scrap tire sites across Texas. Currently, there's about 103 identified unauthorized scrap tire sites, and they account for approximately 14.7 million tires. So that's definitely still something that is a high priority for us, looking at ways that we can address those tires and get those sites cleaned up. But again, the report was just finalized yesterday, and it's available on our website. If you just go to the scrap tire program, and then it's under, I believe, annual reporting and report summaries. So you'll be able to get an electronic PDF version of it there.
I have a quick question. Yes. Looking at that chart that you had here, so over the last 5 years, really forgetting about next year, or last year, which would really be 4 years, there's a pretty significant increase. And so what do you attribute the capturing of that information? Is it just better reporting?
Yeah, I've heard several things. Last year, we saw a potential uptick that could be related to potentially Hurricane Harvey. But now as you're looking at this data, so that's where we saw this really big jump. But now we're still in the 45.9 million realm. So population, so as the population increases, I think right now the census says Texas has about 29 million people in it. So the population continues to grow. What I'm hearing from people in the industry, it's also just that people are driving more, have more vehicles. So I don't know exactly where the increase is, but those are the things that I generally hear on reasoning behind it. But definitely with this, with the state growing and being strong economically, and a lot of miles being driven, those are some of the things that I've heard, some reasoning behind it.
You know, one thing, I don't know if we could get a presentation, Holly, on this, maybe at the next MSWRRAC meeting, if that was possible. Because, yeah, that's one thing I noticed. Historically, it's been about roughly 1 tire per person is kind of how it worked, and looks like it's probably up to about 1.5, which is a big change. So, but that's good if we have that increase. So, I don't know, maybe we get a presentation on that at the next advisory council meeting. Would be my suggestion.
Yeah, I think the other interesting part of that is, so if you compare, like for 2015 and 16, it's kind of like those 2 years it popped at a roughly the same number, and then you go another 2 years and there's another pop. So it's not like it's necessarily a relatively nice slope. It's almost like it bumped and then it was flat, kind of, and then it bumped again. Just kind of interesting.
And these numbers do come from, the transporters, the scrap tire facilities, and from the storage sites that submit those annual reports. So at times, I think we had also seen maybe a fluctuation on how many annual reports we received, as well as we clean up sites, maybe those tires are getting back into the, generator world. But yeah, I'd definitely be happy to present some additional information if y'all are interested in that.
Well, I think it'd be a good time to, in October, maybe have that update. That's kind of the end of the fiscal year anyway, and I'm like the rest of them. I mean, it's pretty interesting. From 14 to 15, it's about a 6 million jump, and then you go 15 to 16, 2 million, and then there's another big jump on 16 to 17. And so it's interesting how it just, you have those really increases, and then like Jeff said, it goes flat for a couple of years. So.
Kevin was here.
Yeah.
Do you think we're getting any from other states? I don't know why you would, but you had that California where you had the sham recyclers with the aluminum and everything going from Nevada over. I don't see that in tires, but that's the only thing I could think of too.
Yeah, we do get some from neighboring states.
Yeah, it's unfortunate Kevin's not here, but speaking from my memory of what he has told us before, many years ago when we were reporting 20 million, he was adamant that was an underreported number. right? That was just an underreported number. There's 22 million registered vehicles in the state of Texas. I just did a TxDOT check. And for us to have, you know, that includes trucks with multiple tires. And for us to only have, you know, 24 or 25 million tires didn't really make sense to him. And he just always maintained it was underreported. I think you've just done a better job of throwing the net out and sweeping up the reporters.
Any idea on the drop in the tire-derived fuel from 14 to 15? You're at 51% in 2014, then it dropped to 35%, and it's kind of been 35, 30, 31, 34.
Yeah, do you have a little history on?
Well, I mean,
on the
non-hazardous.
A non-hazardous secondary material rule? Yeah.
We've talked about it in past meetings about that rule. It doesn't allow tires that are not managed in the program to be used as a fuel for cement kilns.
Yeah, I'm not sure if those two, with that history of 2014 to 2015, that could factor in. But that non-hazardous secondary material rule where, you know, if you took a discarded tire and burned as tire-derived fuel, you now had MSWRRAC requirements, which were more stringent air emission control standards that cement kilns would not be too pleased with having to update all their equipment to meet MSWRRAC standards. So that's a potential thing that could have impacted that tire-derived fuel usage. But now it does, yeah, that was a significant drop. And that may be that one thing also is as we talk about more accurate reporting, your tire-derived fuel facilities would have been the ones that tend to be good actors and would be submitting their annual reports and letting you know that they use these tires versus maybe some other people that were either disposing or unauthorized disposal or dumping, things like that. We're not getting annual reports for those.
Yeah,
so it might be skewed because of that as well, who provided the reports.
Don't get hung up on the percent. The number of tires reported increased. If you do the math, the number of tires that went to the TDF is really not that much different. So no kilns shut down. We're sweeping up the reporting anomalies. That's my opinion.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's just accuracy is improved in how we handle that. So, does anybody else have any other questions for Gene?
My staff will be excited that graphic seemed to get quite a bit of attention because it's something we added, and now I can definitely tell it's something that people enjoy.
Give us pictures. We need pictures.
All right, thank y'all.
Thank you, Gene. All right. Well, we're moving right along then.
Ollie,
Yes,
one last
yes,
item.
ma'am. Yes.
And we saved it for last because we don't have a lot of answers for the questions that are probably going to arise. But we want to make you all aware that the EPA, the big EPA, so the Office of Inspector General, not the EPA Region 6, has been conducting an audit of MSW landfill air emissions. They looked at both Georgia and Texas. They actually went to a couple of sites, 3 landfills in Texas in late June, and kind of went over their air permitting, air paperwork, compliance investigations, discussions on how TCEQ internally, how we communicate with air permits, how we communicate with OCE, how they communicate back. So that's a discussion that's still in the works. They are still writing it, and it's basically revolving around the types of permits, air permits that MSW landfill needs to operate based on the size of the landfills, so that's something that's probably, I don't have a lot of answers now. We don't have a lot of answers now. Something in the next year to 2 years is probably going to be that there's going to be some, I wouldn't call it changes made, but the agency will definitely need to provide some guidance on what type of air permits landfill needs, and air permits might have a whole other changes to dealing with the types of permits MSW landfills needs. So that's just kind of informational. We don't have a During the audit discussions with EPA, it was a lot of, here's what permits does, and you'll need to talk to air permits to discuss the air permit part. So we know it's confusing in that aspect of, we do, I hate to say it, we do a lot of finger pointing with these air permits at MSW landfills, but that's kind of how we have it set up. So that's just something on the horizon, that there may be some changes coming up on how and what types of air permits MSW landfills needs. And like I said, we don't have a lot of answers right now. The audit's still going on. The final report isn't coming out, but the EPA OIG did look specifically at Texas and Texas landfills in there. So from what we've heard, the audit report goes to the EPA Region 6. It doesn't specifically say Texas has to fix anything, but it will tell EPA Region 6, here's suggestions for things happening within your region. That's kind of how the EPA audits work when it's the Office of Inspector General. So questions, and we'll do our best to answer it.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that, because I got a call from a couple of landfills that I work with, and it literally scared them to death when they got a call from the EPA requesting information. It just sounded very ominous, and then as we peeled the layers back, it was like, no, they're just trying to get some numbers. So it literally scared them to death.
You may have mentioned this in the beginning, and I didn't pick up on it. Did you say that they actually visited the sites, or were they asking for data submission or permit-related submissions?
Both. I mean, it's a full-blown audit, so they've asked information from both, from the agency, from air permits, the number of Title V permits MSW landfills have. They asked for design capacity from MSW permits, and then they actually did visit 3 MSW landfills, 1 in Dallas, 2 in West Texas.
Those are the 2 I got calls on.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I mean, if you look at the rules, it's there is a clear line, size line, that once a landfill, and this is kind of the discussion we've had with EPA and with air permits on, is it permitted, the initial design capacity, so you receive your MSW permit authorization today, do you need to start getting that, and you're above this, it's 2.5 million cubic meters, or that equates to about 3-point-something million cubic yards. So if you get permitted today, do you need to go get your air permit, and you're above this threshold? Do you need to go get your air permit today, or can you wait until you're getting close to that threshold to go get the air permit? So that's the discussion the agency had with EPA. We'll see what the audit report, we're still in discussion with EPA, we'll see what the audit report finds, but that's kind of in the next couple of years, we'll find out what those changes are related to that threshold.
Do you know if they were requesting greenhouse gas data as part of that annual submission? I'm just curious.
Methane, I believe.
Okay.
Thank you, Charlie. Okay, so next up is Katie Irvin, so to talk about the 2019 Environmental Excellence Awards. Easy for you to say.
Hi
Katie,
there.
good morning.
Thanks. So my name is Katie Irvin, and I'm the Environmental Excellence Awards Coordinator here at the TCEQ. And like Holly said, I'm here to talk about briefly the 2019 highlights and the 2020 awards. And I have a presentation over here. So an overview of the awards, the TCEQ has presented them since 1993. They're the highest environmental honor in the state, and we have awarded over 250 projects since its inception. We are excited to announce officially that the 2020 awards applications are now open, and they'll be open through September. So on the screen are the 10 award categories. These categories are really diverse, so really any environmental project in the state can apply. These categories provide citizens, communities, businesses, and organizations the opportunity to obtain the state's highest environmental honor and be recognized for their efforts. Our newest category is the Environmental Educator of the Year. The purpose of this award is to recognize an environmental educator for their efforts in encouraging environmental stewardship, protection, and conservation. The award sponsor, Waste Management of Texas, provides a $2,500 cash donation to the school or organization where the winning educator works or volunteers. Chuck from Waste Management is here, and we want to thank you and Waste Management for your continued support in this category. 2019 is the first year that we awarded this category, and Waste Management was so gracious that during scoring we were down, it was neck and neck between these two applicants, and they ended up being a dead tie, and Waste Management decided to award both of them with the cash donation. So we want to thank you guys for being so generous on that, because we really couldn't decide. The winners of the award we produce a high quality video highlighting their efforts, and I really recommend going and watching Candace Prince from El Paso and Linda Dunn from Segoville. Their stories are incredible, and it's super inspiring to see what they've done in their years of education. This slide just has the rest of the 2019 TEA winners. They range from nonprofits like EcoRise in the education category to aerospace companies like BAE in the Innovation, Operations, and Management category. Again, all of these projects, we've created a video for them, and they're on our website, and I highly encourage you to watch all of them. They're all really great programs all across the state. So I'm gonna play just a 3-minute video. This one is the Meadows Center in San Marcos. Hopefully we're gonna get.
The Meadows Center is a research arm of the Texas State University. And a number of different things. There's education. We do research, and we're also stewards of this resource in the springs. And Texas Stream Team is about getting citizens involved in monitoring the rivers and the streams of the state.
We just trained our 10,000th citizen scientist, and so we have a wonderful network of folks that are dedicated to protecting our waterways and also inspiring environmental stewardship. The Texas Stream Team is dedicated to understanding our over 191,000 miles of waterways in Texas, and only about 30 to 40% of those are monitored by professionals on a quarterly, if not annual basis. The Texas Stream Team citizen scientists can come in and add, a lot more eyes on these waterways and help us understand and protect our precious natural resource.
Citizen scientists are everyday people like you and me. I don't have a science background, but I am Stream Team certified, so I am a citizen scientist. I go out and I help collect data along with my neighbors and my colleagues. Things that we're doing here every day, is so important.
A citizen scientist will be assigned a site out at maybe their favorite river or their favorite swimming hole, and they collect a water sample and usually test on site for the water quality parameters. And then they record it on a data sheet that they can either enter that data online through our Waterways data viewer, or they can submit the data sheet by mail.
So I was following the Texas Stream Team protocol. I collected some water in my bucket, measured water clarity using a Secchi tube. Then I used the probes to collect measurements measuring temperature, pH, specific conductance, and dissolved oxygen. After that, I recorded some observations. The data that I recorded today will be sent to the Texas Stream Team central database, and that's available for public viewing.
With 191,000 miles of waterways, our state is so diverse, and working with partners allows us to plug in with communities. They're really the way that we can empower these local citizens with knowledge about how they can protect their local waterways.
So if you guys have a project or an educator or an individual in mind, we highly encourage you to apply or to just spread the news. Like I said, the deadline to submit is September 27th. And you just go on tea.org to apply. It's a pretty quick application. And we are hoping to see more applications from all around the state so we can award some great projects this year. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. Do you want to have any questions for Katie? Really enjoyed that, and I'd encourage everybody to go online. I've already looked at some of those and take a look at those videos. They're really interesting, and it's great to see that happening. So, thank you very much. Okay, well, we go from streams to disaster debris. So, Michelle, welcome back. Glad you were able to get here today, and going to talk a little more about debris management, disaster debris management. So, welcome.
It's my favorite subject. Good morning, and thank you again. I think it's been probably about a year and a half since I've had the opportunity to come speak with y'all. I think last time we were probably about 4 months after Harvey hit, so we were still kind of in the middle of the game of cleanup and doing response and recovery. So I was glad to come and talk to y'all. Unfortunately, yeah, we're dealing with Tropical Storm Barry now. So, but anyway, so I just wanted to kind of touch on a few things. I want to still talk a little bit about Harvey. We still actually do have, I believe, 2 sites that are still open. We had some projects that came in that were some that were a little bit later that came up, so we went on and we have done those approvals on that. And so, like I said, so we still have a couple of sites out there. As far as total, we had over 230 approved temporary debris sites after Harvey. And the last number I saw as far as total debris removed was a little over 13 million cubic yards. And so, like I said, so as far as debris authorizations, like I said, that was, we had numerous ones all over the state, or more inland than we were originally expecting, but like I said, most of those covered our Beaumont, Houston, and Corpus Christi regions. And like I said, I think last time when I was here, we were talking about how we had to be a little creative because a lot of our staff were impacted by the storms, and so of using some of our other staff to review and do those approvals on those applications. Excuse me. So since Harvey, we have had some other flood events. We had October 2018 had some flood events out west of here in Llano County along the Colorado River. Had several debris authorizations get issued for that. We also had, and let me even back up a little bit, down in the valley in June of 2018 had severe flooding down in the Rio Grande Valley that we issued some authorizations, and then had a repeat of the Rio Grande Valley here just a few months ago that a lot of people weren't even aware of the flooding that they had again here just a few months ago. So we've done some authorization on some temporary debris sites down there as well. And really this has been an active spring. I mean, we've had a lot of storms all over the state. I mean, we've had flood events out in West Texas, the Panhandle. So we've had authorizations from all over the state. So like I said, it's been a very active spring. And our staff continue, as well as myself, of trying to get out there, do outreach to our local communities to make sure if they've been impacted by a storm that they're aware of the authorization process. If they're going to set up a temporary debris site, make sure they're aware of the criteria that's involved in that and answer any questions that they have. And along those same lines, those that weren't impacted by any disasters were continuing, as well as myself, to really encourage our local communities to go out there, put a debris plan together, pre-identify sites that you might be able to set up a temporary debris site. Encourage them that they find multiple sites because you never know, that site that you might be looking at might not be available during an event. So we still are definitely pushing and encouraging our local jurisdictions to look into doing that as well. One thing I also wanted to bring up today, same thing, we were quite busy during the legislative session as well, and wanted to talk a little bit about House Bill 5 that discusses the catastrophic debris management planning and training. And some of that involves, they're actually going to break this up into multiple work groups because it was such a long, intensive process, and there's a little bits and pieces that most likely I will probably end up sitting in on all of these for TCEQ. And some of that bill also discusses a plan for clearance and disposal. It also discusses the use of air curtain incinerators, including the trench burners, coming up with a contract or a model contract, and I'll be working with not only the multiple state agencies involved with this, as well as FEMA and also the Comptroller's Office to put some sort of model contract, because there's a lot of local jurisdictions that don't have any existing contracts in place, and trying to help those that don't, try to encourage them to try to get those set up. And if they still don't have something that they can hand over, that they have kind of a one-stop shop of having all that information together. Including also on House Bill 5 is also a wet debris study work group that I haven't seen an invite yet on that. I know that's still coming, to getting all the state and federal agencies together on that as well to discuss. And then lastly is a work group on local restrictions that impede disaster recovery. And that's including both debris and, I know that's not really short-term housing, which I know doesn't really include the folks in here, but those are also some things that are included in that bill as well. So these are all going to be, this House bill is actually tasked to Division of Emergency Management, but they will definitely bring in multiple state agencies, federal agencies to help on these work groups to kind of discuss and come up with some plans moving forward. We saw during Harvey that there were things that went well and things that didn't, things that had never been done. I mean, TxDOT got tasked with doing a lot of off-system. I mean, they have their staff and contractors do on-system, but they were tasked with doing off-system debris cleanup as well. And so we had multiple TxDOT sites that were actually approved for temporary debris sites, as well as one of their large sites that I talked about last time on Highway 35, where they were using the ACIs, the burn boxes, for vegetative debris. And so those, we're still working on how to utilize those, because the Division of Emergency Management, State of Texas actually owns 6 of those, and how we were going to move forward on utilizing on those on future events. One thing we're also kind of discussing on some of that as far as declared versus non-declared events. From what I'm hearing is, yes, with the census, that will most likely push up our amount threshold that the state will have to meet to get federal declarations. So something to consider on that as well, because right now a lot of these are kind of, I mean, we may get our state declarations, but as far as those FEMA and those federal declarations, may be even a little bit more difficult in the future. So with that, I wanted to leave a lot of time, because I know y'all usually always bring a lot of good discussion to the table, so wanted to kind of open up for comments and see if I can answer your questions.
Michelle, there had been some talk about TCEQ allowing entities to go ahead and identify sites and have them pre-approved. Where are we at with that?
The question I always get asked. Right now, we still are not pre-approving sites. We're still pushing the pre-identifying sites. There has been some that have been used multiple occasions where the process is streamlined pretty quickly as far as getting that, because for the paper trail, what we're looking for is of having that application for that event. And so currently we are still just encouraging the pre-identifying sites and not actually doing pre-approvals.
So when you said you reach out to communities, and I guess you're trying to be proactive at getting them thinking ahead of the game before an event occurs.
Absolutely.
You know, what's the mechanism? Who do you reach out to? I mean, do you call the mayor, the city manager?
A lot of that's dependent, and like I said, what I touch, a lot of these are at workshops, conferences, and things like that. And our region offices are kind of different from region to region. Some, I believe, actually send out formal letters. Some actually, I think, actually do face-to-face visits. And these are with the county judges, the MCs, anyone that might be involved in that response. And so it's different mechanisms of how they're reaching out to that. Like I said, most of mine is usually face-to-face at conferences and workshops. I sometimes will piggyback on some of TDM. They do debris management courses. And so a lot of times if they're close enough and I can get there for a day or so, I usually come in to help talk about TCQ roles in that as well, just to kind of re-certify that what our requirements are, our criteria, and just to try to, like I said, any way we can, because even like after an event, our region offices, for the most part, if we know what areas were impacted, of trying to reach out here again, either the county judges, the MCs, Public Works, whoever that case may be, because it's not only on the debris, obviously, we're also looking at water, wastewater impacts as well. But like I said, it's a various outreach methods to the locals.
Well, I know it's one of those things you don't like to talk about, and you probably put it on the back burner, and then it happens, and then you really don't have a plan. That's why I was wondering how receptive are they when you reach out to actually going in and doing the work they need to do to set these up and identify sites.
Yeah, and absolutely. And also, I mean, it's like whether you've got turnover in staff and if there's been an election or whatever the case may be. So a lot of times, same thing is just trying to keep up with the contact person for a lot of these communities too, just to ensure that we're getting it to the right person that needs that information. And so a lot of times, even if we're doing outreach, it still helps when we're also contacting them when we know we're hitting these impacted areas. And sometimes that we don't know. There's times that TDM will contact me and we'll kind of, like I said, this is where having those relations with our other state and federal agencies come into play and is helpful, because we may have not known this area over here was impacted as bad as it was. And that happens. It's happened a lot this spring because we've had them all over Texas and areas that hadn't been hit. And that's one thing too, especially if we've had a community that hasn't had a disaster in a while, to ensure that they're aware of same thing, the criteria, the application process, and the various other things that may come into play just dealing with the disaster.
I guess we handle disposal of that a lot differently. I'm speaking historically in Lubbock, particularly. In May 1970, they had a devastating tornado. In fact, it was the one where the Fujita scale was actually developed when he came down from the University of Chicago and studied the aftermath of that. Here we are all these years later. Those sites are not well documented, and it's amazing how many times we will be in a project and boom, we hit, and it's obvious when you hit it, and they're all over parts of a certain part of Lubbock, and it's just those sites were not well documented. I'm sure we do a much better job of that today, but.
Yeah, one thing I want to mention, especially talking about the Lubbock area, so I've actually been involved in a couple of workshops dealing with carcass disposal. The African swine fever has really been starting to get a lot more attention, and so working right now with the Texas Animal Health Commission and the various state and federal agencies involved on that to start thinking about carcass disposal. Large quantity carcass disposals. I think a lot of that too put in perspective of the first workshop I went to, and the disposal was 50,000 swine, and I was like, whoa, okay. So definitely starting to think that process too of how we as a state and our partners, our landfills, how we would deal with something like that, and some of the options that we'd be looking at. So something I hadn't really thought of. Like I said, usually dealing with disasters, Harvey. We kind of looked out because, like I said, we didn't really have as much carcass disposal issues that we thought we would. So like I said, but that's starting to put in perspective of things we need to think about, and grateful that the Animal Health Commission's kind of pulled us into that conversation to start thinking about it, at least, of how we would deal with that. So.
That brings up a really interesting point. I know that the agriculture industry in many cases is right now trying to address how to handle large mortalities, large numbers of mortalities, either from natural disasters or from disease, devastating disease events, that sort of thing. And one of the things that the ag industry is looking at is how to compost large quantities of mortalities. And I suspect that the TCEQ, as a regulatory agency of that activity, would be caught completely off guard if that ever happened on a large scale here. So just a little bug in the back of your head that that's an issue that might be worth addressing.
Absolutely, I agree.
I'm Cheryl Murgo with the Houston COG. So for us, it's always an ongoing education. That we had one webinar in May, kind of Debris Management 101. We're having another one on the 30th this month, and it's looking at droughts and fires. And we've all been so focused on Harvey, but there's other events that we've gotten. And then we're having on the 16th of August our full-blown workshop. And it is going over some new changes, regulations. We have commissioned a report to look at our actual debris that was generated with Harvey, and kind of comparing it to some of the estimations from the different models and doing things like that. And I'll send you an invitation so you can be aware.
Thank you very much.
Hey, Michelle, I apologize. I didn't do my homework on time, but I remember from our last conversation, in the application for a temporary site, there's some restrictions, and kind of stubbed our toe. I think it was proximity to groundwater wells we had a discussion about. Is there any review going on the restrictions, or are you happy with those?
So we are in the process of kind of revitalizing our debris work group right now. So we haven't had our first kickoff meeting, but I think all our criteria we're going to look at again to kind of revisit some of that. Here again, I hate to go back to Harvey. Harvey was very different. I mean, we all know it was a very different storm. I think everybody in the group hopes we never have that again, but there were things during Harvey that we had to kind of look at just because of the event. And what we were doing. Now, during a typical regular event, and this is one thing I keep pushing when I'm going out to talk to them, just because we authorize some of these sites during Harvey, that same site might not necessarily be authorized during the next event. And just making sure that they understand that, because Harvey was. I mean, we were very, we definitely knew what was going on during Harvey. We understood that some of the criteria, I mean, we weren't going to meet that quarter mile. And so, I mean, if we're at 0.2 of a mile, understanding that, yes, of making sure that we were continuing and not hindering the process of the debris cleanup. So we definitely are still, and we, like I said, looking at setting a kickoff meeting. I'm hoping within the next month or so.
Are you gonna take any input from outside stakeholders on that?
I do not know, and I know you and I think you brought that up last time. That's something I will probably bring to the group to see if that would be a consideration. Like I said, because I know I work with so many different agencies and local jurisdictions that I mean, I've been kind of keeping track of a lot of things that I've heard from Harvey to kind of bring to the table that a lot of our staff may or may not be aware of that are ongoing out there. So
yeah,
definitely something I can ask.
If you just have them, print out a map of known water wells in Harris County as an example, and draw a 1/4 mile radius around every one of them.
It pretty much going to cover the whole county.
It gets tight, and
yeah.
we actually ended up in a situation where we had a lined landfill that we could not use as a temporary debris facility because of that 1/4 mile setback. And not to throw anyone under the bus, but what they ended up doing is setting it up off the landfill on the other side of the fence. Okay, so it's a tough, understandable world. You got to know where your groundwater wells are. I'm not questioning, but when you look at 1/4 mile, that's a rigidity that you don't have on most of your facilities, right?
Yeah, and that's one thing here again, going back of doing that work group to kind of look at the criteria, because the criteria are probably more strict than a lot of the rules and regs and other criteria that are out there for a reason. During Harvey, the other thing, like I said, some of those criteria we're a little flexible on just because of the event. And then also one thing during Harvey, that we may not necessarily do during other events was doing at a minimum a weekly inspection at that, which is a little bit different than we typically would do, because a lot of time, like a lot of these other events that we've had this spring, they're short term, so they may have that site out there for about a week or so. But during Harvey, that's when reassurance we get, the fact that we do have staff out there at least once a week. I think we were even doing some twice a week. Some of those I actually went out on with the Corpus Region staff, just to make sure that the criteria were being addressed as best as possible, to making sure that they didn't catch on fire, because that was a concern, because then that potentially could compromise their cost recovery. And so also working with that, and then just making sure the locals were, especially those that were contracting all the work out, to make sure that the locals were aware of what was going on there as well at the sites. And so, but definitely something that I know, just from what I've heard from a lot of the communities and even some of the contractors and stuff, of looking at those criteria and seeing, and it may be the same. And so, and it may be here again just at the discretion of the event in the region office.
Anything else for Michelle? Well, great. We appreciate you coming back and giving us an update on that. And
fingers crossed. Let's hope no storms in
have
Texas.
a slow year.
I know. Thank y'all. And if y'all need anything, please feel free to reach out to me. Like I said, I definitely encourage people to reach out to me, good or bad, because I mean, if we don't know what the bad is, we can't make it better, or at least to have that discussion of why this didn't work. So please don't ever hesitate to reach out to me.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, well, the next item up, in your packet, you should find the meeting minutes from the April meeting, and I'll give everybody a moment to look those over, and if someone would like to make a motion to accept those, when they're ready, feel free.
Move to approve, Mr. Chairman.
Got Mr. Wolverton make a motion. Do I have a second? Second was Trent. All in favor, say aye. As it stands, approved. Action items. Not sure if we had any action items from last time. Diane, are you aware of any? What? I'm sorry.
I think the only thing that we had was the list of the bills y'all requested, and
Okay.
I emailed
That was
that
it?
out.
Okay.
So I think that was the main thing.
Great. Well, now we will open the floor for anyone that's in attendance for any public comments. If you have anything, feel free to come up to the podium and address the council. It's always a stampede of people to come up to do that. It's amazing.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I don't know if it's a public comment. I don't know how many of you are aware of the problems we're having on the Guadalupe River in Guadalupe County. We've had 2 hydroelectric dams fail, one at Willow Lake and the other last month at Lake Dunlap. Is there anything that TCEQ can do to help out? The problem being GBRA has put in virtually no maintenance on these things since they bought them back in the 60s. Right now, they say it's going to cost about $25 million at each location. We have 5 of them, and they have stopped all maintenance on the 3 remaining because of the hazard inside there. But it's just it's a matter of time as to when the next one, which would be Lake McQueenie, fails. It just, in my opinion, GBRA needs to be replaced, and someone with, I guess, better ability to maintain these things, because there's virtually nothing that they've done. And even if we were to replace these dams now, they don't have enough money coming in to even maintain them again. So we would have another 50 or 60 years and we'd be facing the same stuff. So I don't know if there's anything this organization can do, or have a stroke in the Senate to help us get some money, or may have somebody else take over the operation of these dams. Even the people on Lake McQueenie have offered to purchase the dam as long as they get the water rights. GBR says no. But yeah, there's a way to make this work, but GBRA seems to be the stumbling block at the present time.
Anyone have any insight on that?
Just from being familiar with some of the bills that passed, impacted the agency and directed us to do things. You may be aware of these bills, but Senate Bill House Bill 137 by Rep. Hinosa and Senator Perry passed, and that is going to open the line of communications between the TCEQ and locals about the significance of what we look at for dams. So if you take a look at that bill, that may be helpful. And then the other bill that passed was House Bill 26 by Representative Metcalf and Senator Nichols, and that will be effective in September 1st. And basically, that's going to create a alert system to help communities downstream of the dams know when a release occurs. Not probably something that's specific,
That really doesn't help the problem that we have. The alert system, we're looking into it also with Guadalupe County, trying to get sensors on it. But the problem is that we need something done several years back. It's just, that's what the problem is. If anybody had really known the conditions of these dams, or actually hydroelectric dams, they're not really flood control dams, but we have a trickling of water going for about 2 miles now that people walk across. And then they don't even have that in Willow Lake anymore. And it's just a matter of time until the next 3 fail, and then what are we going to do?
Yeah, Samuel Warrenson is our point man for dam safety at the agency. If you haven't heard that name, I'm surprised, but he is the point for dam safety for our agency. And I can happy to send you his contact information, but he knows everything about dams in the state, and he will intently listen and help in any way he can.
Does he have a checkbook? Because that's what it's going to take. The bottom line is it's going to be about $25 million per location. Right now, nobody can find the money, and it's just, right now it's they have an old bear trap and they want a new design, but once again, that's just the cost of the dam. Once you put the engine and everything else, you're probably looking at $200 million.
Right.
But I just want to know, is there anything that this organization can do to help get some money? We're looking on the federal level, Corps of Engineers, everybody else, but no one wants to step up simply because they don't own the dam. GBRA owns the dam, and there's absolutely no way for them to pay back any debt service.
Yeah, I don't know.
We would
that
have
it's
to get
really-
appropriated money for that through the legislature.
Yeah. Good luck. Thank you.
Oh yes, it was House Bill 26. It's a dam safety notification. The other one was House Bill 137. And it was basically, it's going to classify that when the House Bill 37 is going to classify hazard dams. It's going to come out with a sort of a report classification. It's like over 1,700 dams in the state. So actually, there's over 7,200 dams in the state.
Okay, thank you. All right, well, if no other comments, we will adjourn and see you in October. Thank you.